Welcome to the Non-Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Manny Lampson. If this is your first time listening or your 50th time listening, this is what to expect on this episode. We dive into the concepts of developing your leadership toolbox. Why do you need this? You need this in any situation to help manage, lead, and control, and ultimately win. How do you do that? You can't use the same form of leadership in everything you do. So every episode, we dive into my leadership philosophy. We dive into the story and the background of the person we're talking to. And we also dive into some leadership traits I have accrued throughout the years. And then we also follow it up with a book review at the end. So you're getting a wide range of leadership topics and traits that you can add to your kit. So without further ado, let's go into the recap of this episode. And afterwards, if you love it, like it, share it, follow it, give us some feedback because we're only just getting started. All right, we're leaving you with another banger today. I am joined with Dennis Zanoni, goes by Z. He is a prior Air Force 20-year vet, security forces badass. And just to cover some of the stuff we went over in depth, calculated risk, luck. Why is luck so frequently used to those who put in the hard work? Emulate those around you for what they do good, but also you want to emulate or not do what they do bad. We talk about feedback. We talk about hierarchy of leadership. When I hear no, the chameleon leader, which is a huge one that we drop at the end, and I love it very, very much. We talk about problem solving training, interpersonal skills, and project management. All of this within the hour block. Discussing some great stuff with a great friend that I've met on LinkedIn, and I hope you guys get to reach out to as well. Again, I will leave his info in the show notes. We also cover 3 books for you, which I'll leave in the show notes with the Amazon link. As always, get ready, take some notes, and become a better leader. All right, we're ready to do this. Dennis and I already had a quick pre-podcast before this as we were talking about innovation and careers and some great stuff. But you guys have already heard the intro, so we're just going to dive right in. Dennis, just like I talked about before, we'll start with the 3 H's. Just like everybody's heard before on all my podcasts, I got this from my first episode guy, Columba, who was interviewed by the base commander at Dias, and this is the first thing he asked him. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Get to know somebody a little different. So hometown, 2 heroes, and a hardship. Feel free to explain those and take your time if you need to. And then we'll go into your career a little bit and then dive into some leadership stuff. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great. All right. So I'm Dennis Zanoni. I go by Z. I grew up in Honolulu, Hawaii, and so, really Hawaii, the island of Oahu. And so I, grew up there, graduated high school, went to college for a bit, and I kind of wanted to give back. I felt like I was taking more than I was giving, and I wanted to join the Air Force and give back. So I wanted to join the Air Force, and so basically from there. It was pretty good. That's kind of how I got started in the military. But I guess younger days, earlier, some hardship was, when I was I think I was like, 11 or 12-ish. So I had a brother and he passed away. He was born with some handicaps and some physical issues. It unfortunately caused him to pass away early. So I helped him out a lot when I was young and kind of grew me up quicker. Some people say it's hard, but I think to learn some responsibility and some good life lessons and taking those things in. I think that's where my optimism came from and my real appreciation for life, right? Understanding that life's very short, make the most of it because nobody knows how long they have. And just being able, even though it's a short time, even though he had a short time frame, I'm appreciative of the short time that I was able to have with that person and spend with them. Same thing with some other folks, and while it may have got cut short sad, I think, that's come with some of the hardships. We can touch on that later as part of the grit. Some of the other things that I know you talked about and you have. So I'll save that. But some heroes I have, well, I wouldn't really say heroes, but just some people, I kind of want to, I enjoy their ethics and their values and some of the things they've done is, one of them is John Maxwell. I used to teach John Maxwell in the military. I'm certified John Maxwell. I'm actually going to the international conference here in like 2 weeks to go meet him again in person and go to that event. Keep up my certification, do some things. So I'm certified to teach that in the commercial market. I've taught some different things, a bunch of stuff there. Really, his books really resonate with me, his teachings, how he got started, why he got started, and what he does, his real why is something I really enjoy and like behind him. And that's, a big thing to me. the other person I was going to say, there's a couple of folks, but really the other one is, George Thompson, Doc Thompson. He's the creator of verbal judo and the verbal judo way of leadership. And I like him because he said he took these principles that he saw people doing well at. Hey, these guys are doing good. Look at these folks doing these things. How are they able to do what they do, and why? And then why are these people that aren't so good doing these things that aren't very good? It started out in law enforcement, but it actually scaled out into a bunch of other things. He scaled it out into leadership. And he used that when he was in college to do his thesis and his doctorate. And that was what he basically did to get his doctorate and dissertation on. He wanted doing more studies on it and finding out like why some law enforcement officers are great with people. They don't have any problems. They're able to treat people with dignity and respect and gain cooperation and get people to yes and get those yes answers and get them to do what they need to do. And other ones continually had problems, were always in fights, right? Disciplinary issues. And so he saw that and really kind of used that to figure out the difference. What made the good ones good and how, and then what, really separated them from the others. And he wrote a book on it called Verbal Judo. And then from there, he took another book. He looked at it more, looked at leadership, and then wrote another book. He came up with the hook down theory on that, which was pretty cool. It basically tells you to hook down and raise people up, right? You want to bring people up and make, leadership is a pyramid. Everybody should be going to the top. And next time you move to the next one, you want to bring people up to the next level and kind of keep raising people up was the short basis on it. So those are kind of, the reasons why I kind of like them. And then sometimes too, you kind of have to make yourself the person that you want to be and you want others to see as leaders. So I think sometimes, looking to you as setting the example is another good way to go. But so those are, I guess, kind of the three H's: the hometown, the heroes, and the hardship there.
Yeah, let's dive into that hometown. So I'm always going to ask when somebody goes to college why they didn't become an officer, right? So I'll ask you.
Yeah, I get asked that a lot.
I know. So for those listening, and we'll get into it when we cover your career, but you enlisted Security Forces 2000. My question, to most people is, because I've had airmen come in that had college, and I'm like, bro, what are you doing? And for some of them, it's pretty simple, right? Like OTS and civilian side is really hard to find. It's hard to find those recruiters. So what was it? What was that experience like for you when you're thinking of joining while in college?
So yeah, I was going to college. I didn't think about joining in college at all. And then, I wound up looking at enlisting. I was only going to do 4 years. So I had a plan. They were like, look, just go, because I think I was like a year off from my degree. And so they were like, look, just go in, finish your degree. They'll pay for the rest of it. And I was actually looking to get out and do, at the time, customs and immigrations was separate. It wasn't under Homeland Security. And so I had a friend, he was doing immigrations. And then another guy, his other buddy was customs. And he was like, hey, look, I was security forces, and a couple of people were telling me to join the Air Force too. And I was, like I said, kind of looking to give back and do a little more instead of just, going to school and waiting tables. And so he was like, hey, look, I goes, you know what? I did school and I went in and finished my degree with the Air Force. I did 4 years. He was like, I guarantee you a job, man. I'll hire you, or my other buddy will hire you. He actually switched from customs. He does the FBI now. He's like, we were both security forces. He was telling me all about it. He's like, you'll do great. You should go, if you're looking to get back and do that. And then he goes, then your time carries over into GS world. So he kind of explained it all to me and broke it down. And I was like, man, that sounds great. Let me, let me try that then. I went and talked to the recruiter. He was like, security forces. He looked at my ASVAB. He goes, take this ASVAB score. He's like, you speak 2 languages, you got college, and you scored this on your ASVAB. And he goes, are you sure you want to do security forces? I'm like, yeah, why? And he's like, well, because he was intel, and he was kind of trying to talk me out. I'm like, well, and I explained to him why, and he was like, all right.
How many people probably come in, guarantee, want to do security forces right away?
Yeah, exactly. He was like, well, lucky for you, there's a bonus for it. I'm like, oh, even better. And so then I was in basic training, and they actually tried to talk me out of security forces in basic training. I don't remember what it was. There was some point I got called up to MPF, and they were like, hey, you want to do firefighting instead? What about linguistics? And I was like, no. And they're like, well, what do you mean no? And I was like, well, this is what I wanted to do. This is what I came in for. And I'm like, but the other 2 jobs don't have a bonus. They're like, well, they're like, well, maybe for an enlistment. I'm like, well, I don't plan on re-enlisting. They're like, so you sure? I'm like, yeah. They're like, this is your last chance. I'm like, okay. So that was kind of how it went. And, I wasn't super familiar with the officer route. And they're like, finishing my last year. obviously the recruiter didn't educate me on it. So I got in, and a couple people were like, man, you should do this boot thing program and different stuff. And, I was like, well, I'm just trying to get through my enlistment, and obviously I made it past my 4 years, 22, but, so I wound up re-enlisting, and, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. At the time, when I looked at going officer route, they weren't taking anybody, from the enlisted side. There was a little bit of a freeze and some manning stuff, and then after September 11th, there was a few other things. And so I kind of looked at that route, talked to a few different people. Then I wound up getting a special duty assignment. And then it was kind of like, hey, they're going to lock you in for this. I was like, cool, I can look at it afterwards. So then by that point, I was kind of at my, 8 or 9 year mark. And I kind of looked at the opposites. And, for officers, I see it's, good or bad. Sometimes, officers are kind of rough on each other, right? And so there's kind of that piece. And then from what I saw, from what I heard, obviously in my young years, I was always told like officers are more policy, more program, right? You start getting higher up. You're not really dealing with people as much. You're not impacting people's lives every day. And I like the enlisted side of like having a lot of security force, especially you get a lot of troops, right? You supervise a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I liked having a larger impact on folks and like working more with airmen and supervising and like being there for people. So I kind of like that aspect of it. So it wasn't, a super huge thing for me. So it was kind of, 50-50 on, hey, what to do. And I always got offered some good jobs, had good people taking care of me and, doing good. So kind of became kind of a difficult choice at, one point of like, do I really focus on this? Everything's going good on this way, so I didn't really think about it until the end. I got another email, like my, 16 year mark when I was deployed or 17 year mark. When I was deployed asking if, hey, you're a candidate for this, you put in for this before, but by that time I was like, man, I'm almost retiring. I know some people do it for their extra retirement and stuff, but
yeah, a lot of people always ask me, what I liked more, my enlisted job or obviously being a flyer now. And I tell a lot of people, man, I still love being enlisted, like hacking the mish every day, like that's what I tell a lot of airmen when they're asking me like what to do with their life or to become an officer and what the difference is. Like, man, enlisted, like your job is your job, like you show up, you work, you grind, you do your tasks, you do your upgrades. That's it, So if you love it, you love it. Like I love being a SEER guy. I wish there were SEER officers, and I hate it that there isn't because every other special warfare job has an officer, and it still bugs me every time I talk about it with people. So I'm going to try to continue to maybe one day try to pursue why it's not. But anyways, I tell a lot of people, I love being enlisted. I loved hacking the mish and doing the job. And like you said, officer is a lot different, man. Like, and I've just now truly dipped into the officer side. Being a flyer, it's like half enlisted, right? You're doing a job most of your career because you're focused on flying and aviation and tasks. And we talked about it before. Most flyers don't really get a chance to lead or manage or do the programs until like senior captains, early majors. And that's 8 years down the road. So that's crazy, to think you're going to be a leader 8 years into your officer career. And, so and so when you're talking about the differences.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is when you cross train too, they don't guarantee, you normally don't go back to your same career field. So there's no telling what career field I would have got. And you don't normally get a choice, so like, obviously I wouldn't mind like acquisitions or like, fine at them or those kind of positions. But, like if you get a job that you're like, man, this is kind of garbage, you got to try and cross train again and look at other options. So, that was the other piece too. I really wanted to either, do some special duty or stay security forces, or if there was more of a guarantee, I think, in where you could go or, the possibilities of at least, hey, we're going to give you your top 3 choices or top 5 out of these career fields. I think that might've been more of a selling point as well.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's talk about your career, man, because I love it. And we talked about it a little bit before. So for those listening, security forces is, in layman's term, more a cop for the Air Force. Most people associate them with, gate guarding or patrols. So they maintain those, but there's a lot of other extra duty jobs. I have found out, I have a good friend who's security force here at Dias. So I found out there's a lot more to the duty, But like we talked about, you took opportunities outside of security forces to go and become a better leader, take these chances, and do those additional duty jobs. So let's talk a little bit about, doing the security forces side and then how taking those extra duty jobs improved your leadership skills and improved you as a person too. So, because for some people listening, maybe they're listening as an airman or something that's like, hey, maybe I don't want to go do this job because it's not my current job and I don't know what it's going to be like. But you may spark their interest, be like, oh, I could go do these additional duties and still continue my career.
Yeah, no, that's very good, and I think sometimes people get honed into thinking like, oh, security forces, or oh, they're this job, and they're like, because even now, so now I do a lot of like contract management. I run my own business. I'm very familiar with funding and manpower and a bunch of other things, and a lot of people like when they talk to me, they're like, "You're security forces," and they're so surprised. And they're like, "What? Well, how did you learn all this? Well, how did you get here?" And it's really that outside the box thinking, working those things that other people don't always want to do, taking those chances, taking those risks, those calculated risks, so to speak, and those opportunities, right? And learning, and sometimes being uncomfortable and just getting out there and really just doing it. And so I get that a lot, and so that's kind of a thing, right? And like you were saying, security forces, the one reason I liked it, it's the largest career field in the Air Force, but there's so many different jobs. There's nuclear security, air-based defense, deployment type of mission. There's, airfield security is kind of, that kind of thing. And then obviously there's, the law enforcement side. And so there's a lot of different things you can do. And there's actually a lot of special duties. And because you're such a large career field, sometimes you're not necessarily, I'm not going to say missed, but you're not as, that one person being out of the career field on a special duty sometimes isn't as pivotal as something that's more of a critical career field. Even though traditionally it seems like security forces have low man numbers, or they're like, oh, it's critically manned, we can't let you out of this rank, or these times, there's still a lot of stuff you can do in security forces. So like I got lucky, I got to go down to Miramar, San Diego, right? And I got to do confinement duty down there at the brig in Miramar. And so that was a really good assignment, working with the Navy and the Marines and all this gave me a great, I did my first Navy contract there because I wanted to get things done. And they're like, oh, we don't have money. Well, what do you mean we don't have money? We just put in $175,000 flooring for the front area to make it look good with epoxy resin, And so, digging into that, solving that problem. Did my first Navy contract, even though I was working in training, and doing, I was there as security forces. So it gave me a lot of good opportunities. So I did that. And then, I got to do security forces, special duty in Turkey at the, working with the embassy and headquarters and different places. And so there's, a lot of cool different special duties, a lot of cool places to go. And then, a lot of folks wind up coming in, they like canine, combat arms. You can do like, all kinds of flyaway security missions and travel a lot. I got to get air marshal certified. It was pretty cool. There's a lot of great things you can do, and there's a lot of good opportunities. You just have to seek them out and find them and talk to folks.
Yeah, I think that's, that's a downfall of really the military. Sometimes some jobs can get very sucked into like doing this one task. Your head's down, you're grinding. Then a bunch of years go by and you're like, oh, shoot, this is all I've done for the past 6 years. Like this is all I have to do. When in reality, if you just looked up, got to know people, asked questions, looked around, you could find these opportunities. And most of the time I have found those opportunities are there and not a lot of people are applying for them. So if you just apply, you have a pretty good percentage. And that's the hardest thing I try to, it's not hard. It's what I try to stress for airmen, but it's hard for them to do. Because, like SLEP, all these ways to become an officer now, there are so many. And I tell a lot of airmen, I'm like, you guys, there's like 6 to 9 ways to become an Air Force officer now. And yes, the packages are hard, but if you just apply, there are not going to be many people you're competing against. So just take the time now, figure out what resources you need, put in a good package, and there's opportunities out there. It's really hard once they get in the grind of things to pick that head up and look around.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's sometimes too, that's a good point where you get so busy in the job in the day to day that it's hard to look outside and anywhere else. And I kind of have a side story if you want to hear that later, but let me know.
One question I'll start asking you then now is, so let me go through my notes here. You were at Travis. Obviously, I hope you had some In-N-Out where you were there because it's only the best burger place in the world. So,
most definitely.
We'll throw that one out there only because it's great to have some California connection on there. And then you transition. Oh, yeah. So some of the questions I had. Throughout your career, and this may be a deep thinker, for your leadership experience, did you find moments where you really noticed your leadership change, or was it like a gradual change, or were there really big moments where you had to develop leadership skills, and maybe how did you do it? Because I have seen the Air Force doesn't do a great job in teaching leadership skills at a younger level. Yeah, we have ALS. Yeah, we have, NCOIC and all those courses. but they're more of like manager type courses. What stories or lessons you have where you learned some leadership stuff or you developed it? What can you recall?
It's a bit of both. There was some where it was developed externally by going to some external courses that, like Travis was really good for me as a first base. I was lucky. I wouldn't say lucky. I guess lucky with some of the good people there, but, I was telling a couple of people some of my story recently. We were talking about some things and they were like, sounds like you kind of made your own way though. And like, you call it luck, but really when you did these things and volunteered for this stuff, the opportunities came to you, right? And I think it's, well, we say luck, but I think it was it Truman that said, or one of the presidents, I think it was Truman, he was like, I'm a firm believer in luck. The harder I work, the more of it I have. Right. And so
Yeah, that's great.
it's kind of the way it goes, right? Those opportunities, that stuff presents itself more. And so I got, there was some good folks there and I had some good training. So part of it was outside getting some good, training from, different places and seeing some other things. Some of it was just internal. I mean, I'm a pretty strong, pretty strong willed, I guess, and character person anyways, and going there and doing certain things. And I think security forces just kind of brought some of that out, some of my natural stuff out as well. And then there were some other pivotal points and some other things. And, I had a couple of folks that were, like one time I remember something was happening and then, some of my natural abilities came through and getting recognized for that and seeing that appreciation. Okay, this is what's valued. This is what's not valued.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then saying, okay, these are the values. This is what success looks like. And these are what some of the better folks look like. Let me emulate this. Here's what some of the folks aren't doing well that are considered the dirt bags or people kind of clown on them. Well, I'm definitely not going to be doing this. Right. And then a couple of people kind of setting you straight from the word go and telling you a few things, I think is very, pivotal and very keen on kind of what's there. And, being just a few moments of like, okay, I went to this course, man, I really learned a lot. This was great. Like I got really lucky. I guess lucky, however, kind of earned it. I got to go to the FBI, basic SWAT school, out there. And so like that was really lucky. I kind of learned a lot, met some good folks there and kept in touch. And before I even came in, I had a good mentor that taught me some things about business and other things and being successful. So that kind of carried me through. And then, other key points, like when I got introduced to John Maxwell, I kind of knew about him a little bit, was familiar with some of his stuff, so there was that. And then, some people just invited me to other things. Like when I was in San Diego, a couple of DOD civilians, they had worked in the, Bureau of Prisons and they'd been around a while, some older folks. And a couple were like, hey, there's this really cool thing. There's, what's the name? I think it's Rex Grossman, POW survivor and a couple other folks, are guest speaking at this, military breakfast they're having during National Police Week. Hey, we have an extra ticket. We want you to come with us. We're one of the people we selected to come with us. So I was like, wow. So like they brought me to that. I really learned a lot there. I really saw how some things I was doing were great. Some things I could do better. And his grit and his big thing, a message of keep the faith, right? Having faith and keeping the faith and, a belief in the outcome being better and different ways to look at those things. That really, that resonated with me. That was really great. And that was another kind of key moment, that kind of a little mind shift, those little shifts in, the way you look at things, perception. And so that was something that was really good for me. And just a few other places and a few other things here and there. And, even sometimes, man, like one time I didn't understand the full impact of some of my leadership. Like I came to the gate one time, one of the airmen was like, man, Sergeant, you got it. Man, I kind of want to be like, he was basically saying something to the extent of wanting to be like me and talking about how good I had it. I was like, he's like, man, like you promoted fast, you're high speed, you're doing all these things. And like, you've got a great family. Look at you, like, man, you're doing so good. That's why some of the airmen like talk up to you. I was like, I'll kind of take them back. Right. And like, I get to work. I was like, wow. I was telling somebody and they were like, yeah, man, you don't see it. You don't realize this. So I was like, no, I guess I never really thought about it. Right. And same thing when we came back from a deployment in 2016. I think it was 17-ish. No, disregard. It was 18. So we're in 2018. There was they're giving out of the awards that they're, unfortunately, Barksdale was a little backed up on some of the awards from the security forces section. They were giving out, some for like the last year. I think there was like 12 people getting either awards and medals and stuff. And then one of the guys actually pointed out, you're like, hey, you realize pretty much everybody up here, but like one or two people, probably two of them, if not one, because I guess I kind of helped out the other guy. He's like, are pretty much up there because of you, or you had something to do with it and handed it some way or somehow of getting these folks recognized and, kind of helping them out and growing them and doing these things. And I was like, man, that's right. I was like, that's pretty cool. It's I was like, huh, kind of had a little aha moment, and I kind of think about that. I'm like, very, very neat. And some of the stuff you kind of don't really think about, right? Or people come back to you later down the years down the road, and they're kind of tell you some stories about, hey, thanks for this, or, hey, this was kind of important. Or every now and again too, you're like, man, maybe I could have done better for these folks, or could have done better here. But I think it's always just trying to do better and trying to grow. And nobody's really perfect at any given time.
Yeah, a couple notes I took from what you just said, which I really liked. The luck quote, right? Like, luck is really just taking opportunity, and just taking the opportunity that's there. Most people don't take the opportunity. Those that do, they consider us lucky, right? Like, a lot of people look at me and go, hey, Manny, like, you were able to not fly for 2 years, lose a bunch of weight, focus on yourself, do all this family time. You're pretty lucky. And I'm like, it's not luck, man. Like, I made the decision to do this. I took advantage of the decision of this time I had and made the best of it, Like, there are a lot of people in my shoes that would have went to an OSS in an ADO slot, not flown and gotten lazy, lackadaisical, and just done nothing and complained. I didn't. I flipped the script. I focused on myself. And a lot of people look at me and go, man, dude, it'd be nice not to fly for 2 years and be able to do all this. I'm like, yeah, but I guarantee you, if you did it, you would not be where I'm at, because I know how hard I had to work to get here. It is not luck, man. Like, I put in some I was busier these past years not flying than I have been flying because I took advantage of the time. So luck is just taking advantage of opportunity right there.
Exactly.
The other thing you
that perseverance.
Is I thought this was really cool what you talked about with learning leadership, and it's overlooked a lot. Is you emulated what great people were doing, but then you notice what was like not working, and you didn't do it. And like, that is so simple yet so effective to develop leadership skills at all levels. Where it's like, maybe I don't know what I need to do to become a better leader, but if I just look around and go, hey, Emerson Snuffy got BTZ. What did they do? Like, oh, or hey, this person got ALS Distinguished Grad. What did they do? Instead of being like, oh, they got lucky, but then you also flipped it and go, hey, this guy's always showing up late. What are they doing to keep getting in trouble? Because I don't want to do that. Some of them are pretty obvious. Show up to work, whatever. But maybe there's little things where you're like, well, every time the NCO talks to them, their head's down, they're not listening, they're not taking notes, or they're complaining. Like, if I just do less of that, I'll get better. That was just, I think we all do it, but to hear somebody mention it as a leadership trait is really cool, because that's what I love about my leadership traits, is they're not extreme. They're not crazy. I've stolen almost every one of these leadership traits I have because I've seen other people do them. I've heard them on podcasts from like generals, from colonels, that are doing it. And I'm just like, stealing that one, putting that leadership trait in my bucket, this one works. Or they talk about what didn't work, and I listen to it and I go, that didn't work in this scenario. So for those listening, that right there is gold. Look around you, take what you can, but then also take what you can't. So I took that note as well. And then the last one, is one I always talk about a lot: feedback, right? Like, it sounds like a lot of the opportunities and the places you went to, you took your lessons learned from it as you were implementing your leadership skills, and were like, oh, that didn't work for me, or that did work for me. And that's a huge thing I've seen in the enlisted side, is the opportunity for feedback to grow. Right. Too many times in the enlisted, even the officer side, feedback is seen as negative. A lot of people don't want to have feedback sessions, or they don't want to do them, from both sides, right? Like, some NCOs don't want to give feedback because they're nervous they're going to become a bad person or hurt their feelings. And then on the other end, people don't want to receive it because they think they're going to get in trouble. On the flying side, that is one thing flyers do very well. And I've said it before. Yeah, we do debriefs and feed. You probably saw it a lot working at Global Strike, working with flyers. They're very good at debriefing and feedback, because we don't have hurt feelings when it comes to like our flying sorties when we do debriefs. Like, we get done with a sortie and we sit in a room for 3 hours, and we all, in the B1, we have 4 people. I could be flying with the base commander and go, hey, sir, you executed this task wrong. Here's what I need you to do next time. He's going to be like, got it, yes, sir, because I'm the mission lead. Like, that's what I love about the flying community and debriefs. That is where we learn. And I've learned working with outside of the flying community, it's not done as well. Like, I've been to some places where feedback sessions aren't structured very well. They're not taken very serious, when that's where a lot of the learning happens.
You're right. And actually, I remember being at Global Strike working with, I think the leadership team fell out of us at the time, but then they moved to A1. But either way, I remember talking to some of the pilots and, knowing that culture as well, and talking about how can we get some of that feedback structure into the enlisted side and educate them to do it better and kind of emulate some of that, right? And then put some of those pieces in there. And so and then we talked about like maybe a shadowing program so some people could see that, or, just doing certain things. And that was, so I think that's a really good point.
All right, so let's continue on with.
I would say on the feedback too, real quick, is, really a lot of people don't want to give it, and sometimes it's hard to ask for it and take it and really self-evaluate. I know, like one time I had this supervisor who was like, "Hey, if I have to give you feedback, we have a problem. All right, just sign this. You're good to go, man. You're a good troop." And that was literally my feedback.
Yes. And I was just on a call a couple of days ago with some people I work with on the first form side, and I told them, "Hey guys, we need to ask for feedback more. Like I've been able to progress a little bit more in my leadership because I've asked my commanders for feedback sessions a little bit more, or I've asked them like every now and then when I see them in the hallway, like, hey sir, just really quick, like, is there anything you need me to do better, or how am I doing here?" Because they're busy too. They're like, officer feedback is tough because as a lieutenant to almost a captain, your raider is your commander of the squadron. And so for them to take time to give you feedback, it's a lot out of their schedule. So you have to be proactive. You have to either send them something for them to fill out and review to give back to you, or you're only going to get feedback during your one midterm session and your 20 minutes after your OPB is done, where they sign in and go, here's your feedback. You did good. Here's some things you can work on. Like, that's it. And so you have to be proactive in asking for some of that feedback, because that's how you're going to get better. And so I do a monthly call with my coach every now and then. And then with my boss in the OSS, I've got a good relationship with, where, it's almost, I think quarterly, we try to at least touch base, and he'll be like, hey man, here's what you got to do. Some things that, the more feedback you get, the quicker it gets too. So.
I think the other good piece, right, is there's self-reflection that needs to happen. If you're self-reflecting, you're going to give yourself that feedback and look at yourself holistically and honestly, and sometimes looking at situations, and, I think that's a good way to go.
What tips do you have for those that are looking to start to self-reflect? What have you tried? What have you done? Like just for those out there trying to learn about that.
I've seen it's kind of hard sometimes. I've read some things and I've seen some folks that are able to stick to it and do it on a daily basis, and they're like, man, I reflect every day at the end of my day. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I look at an interaction that went really good and I'm like, wow, okay, that went great. What did I do well? What kind of, maybe I've even done better? And then what really made this a good interaction? And then sometimes, okay, because sometimes it's not really even as on you. You can only do so much as a leader, right?
Yeah.
And you're not going to change certain people. You're not going to change certain situations. So you can only do what you can do. And I think self-reflecting on it sometimes, like, what could I have done better? Was it my interaction that maybe have keyed this in a different way, or changed these things, or did this? Was it something I said? Was it my tone? And just reflecting on it holistically, and sometimes even doing either you can write down a checklist, do a mental checklist, and it can be something as simple as throughout your whole day, maybe reflect on your week. Sometimes I do a weekly reflect, and I'll do it on Sunday. It's kind of like my kind of down day. I'll do that. Sometimes I do it on like Saturday evening when I kind of distanced everything from the week. So it kind of depends on really the situation, how things go. If things kind of go sour, every now and again, I'll have some good friends and mentors. I'm like, hey, let me know what you think. How did this situation go? And, I'll explain to them like, no, it seemed like you were pretty spot on. And one person even told me, he was like, hey, don't take this the wrong way, but sometimes you get a little kind of uppity and you have kind of a big head, and like, oh, okay, I could see that. Fair enough. He's like, but I really don't see how it was really you in this situation, but I could see some of these things. And, even giving feedback from some other folks sometimes is, a good place to go.
Yeah, those are some great tips right there. I try to do, like a daily audit of my day, right? So
yeah, that's very good.
In the morning when I open my calendar and I write down my tasks for the day, I just make sure before I go to bed just to review it and be like, check. Oh, I didn't do that. What happened there? Same as with meetings. If I have meetings throughout the week, I'm a huge component of every time after a meeting, I'll ask the person like, hey man, send me an email follow-up if they're running the meeting or I have questions, so I can follow up with you and I can readdress some of the things. So there's that. Weekly follow-ups are always really good. I try to do. So I have like a board in my gym. That's like my weekly recap of the week. And it's basic stuff like how many miles did I run? how many followers did I get, but they're all attributed to the goals I'm trying to work on. So I do like a weekly recap in there. But those are some good tips right there I like. And then, those are the simple ones I think most people can execute on. Writing them down is huge because you can verbally cross them off, and see how you do. Auditing your day is a good one because the sooner we can catch those feedbacks, the easier it is to make adjustments instead of waiting for like the quarterly or the monthly feedbacks where you're like, oh, what did I do this month? I don't remember,
Right.
You're not really getting the best for it. So I think that's a good point right there for most people is just, hey, and it doesn't take a lot of time. It's 3 minutes in the morning at the most when I'm setting my calendar for the day, reviewing my tasks, then maybe a minute at the end of the day before I go to bed.
Yeah.
Hey, let me just pull up my calendar really quick. I did this, I did that. Oh, I got to move this to tomorrow, or I didn't do that good there. And it's not like a deep dive. It's just really quick.
Yeah, I've done some of that too, where I've done a gratitude thing, and then reflect on my day, before, right after I brush my teeth as I'm getting into bed, or I lay in bed and then, take a few minutes to say, hey, this went great today. This was some of the good things that I have, and, not focus on some of the negatives and say, okay, maybe this could have been better. What am I going to do? All right, let me get this done tomorrow. Make a note. It doesn't take more than 5 minutes.
No.
And once you do it more and more, not just becomes a habit, it becomes more of a ritual.
Yes, sir. We love our habits and our rituals. Nice. All right, let's dive into these leadership philosophies. My leadership philosophies, obviously, I got them from ACSC, which is like the majors college course we do on the officer side. So my 4 are lead by example in all you do. To be selfless, you have to be selfish, build relationships based off trust and care, and challenge the road in front of you by getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So out of those 4, which one do you do well and how have you developed that? And then which one do you need to work on and how would you work on
it? I think, I would say that the leading by example or building relationships, I would say either one of those, I really like. Well, I'll say we'll go with the leading by example, but I call it, more of a, kind of leading by example or just, being the best version of you and kind of, being modeling, really more of a modeling of it instead of kind of by example. I think that gets kind of thrown around a lot, right? And just that whole modeling and emulating what others kind of want to be and should be. I think the other one is, the selfless. So I have a hard time taking care of myself sometimes, right? I always want to, being selfless and always wanting to do for others and do more, right? But you still have to be able to take care of yourself and grow yourself. So it's always a tough balance. And, when people ask me to do stuff or help them out, I want to do that for them. But sometimes I'm like, okay, I don't want to do too much. Now I'm losing sleep. I'm overstressing myself and overtaxing myself. So that's something I still struggle with, and I go back and forth on it. Sometimes I'm better at it. Sometimes I'm And it's always a challenge, I think, when you're used to doing stuff for others. You want to be a leader, and leaders give back, right? And as a leader, you want to give back and do more, and you want to be kind of selfless, and you have to really not just, I guess, not necessarily give back, but sacrifice. There's a lot of self-sacrifice, a lot of sacrifice that goes into leadership, and the higher you go, usually the more sacrifice you're doing, right? And you're doing for others, and I think that's the tough where you still have to, I don't want to say call it being selfish, but you still have to take care of yourself and look out for yourself. Because if you're not getting that next level of education, training yourself and growing, right? How are you going to keep growing the next generation, those other people? So it's always that kind of tough balance.
Yes. I think what you mentioned about the higher you get, the more selfless you get is, it makes sense, right? In the military hierarchy, we're really selfish on doing our job, working on our skill levels, promoting, so we're really good at that. But like you said, the more experience you get and the more leadership you get, the more selfless you sort of have to be to help the airmen below you, which makes sense, right? I want my airmen to win awards. I want them to progress. I want them to become better people. I need the team to do better. So in hindsight, it makes sense the higher you get to be more selfless, but we always need to remember at all times, take care of ourselves to help others is really what it comes down to. But I like how you phrase it because I never thought of it like that, as far as the higher you get really in any job, the more you should be taking care of people. And it is harder to get selfish the higher you get. So that's a good perspective too. And I like the way you explain that. So that's good. But yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions here because I did some diving on your LinkedIn And LinkedIn has this thing called top skills. I don't know if you noticed it.
Yep.
And this is the first time I've seen it as well. And I like it because it's sort of like leadership traits that you would ask me. So I'm going to review there's 4 of them it has for you. And I want you to explain them in detail a little bit and how maybe you develop them or
it's
how
like a job interview. Perfect. Send it.
It is, yeah. So the ones on your LinkedIn are problem solving, training, interpersonal skills, and project management. The 3 I want you to cover are problem solving and project management because they're sort of the same, and then interpersonal skills. So let's talk about project management because in the Air Force or the military, that's tough.
Right.
How do you see that as one of your good traits, and how did it sort of come about?
I kind of got known as a doer. Somebody kind of got things done as an executor, and I volunteered to do extra stuff. And so I kind of got thrown into the mix, which is hence the problem solving piece too, right? They'll be like, oh, hey man, he got these things done. Hey, I saw some problems, went in and fixed it. Like, hey, we can't be having this. And so, doing that, I got moved into, hey, well, this thing's kind of messed up, man. He's going to grind it out, man. He'll get it. And so I got moved into those positions, did a good job, turned either the program or the project around, getting it executing, getting it through, finding a way, right? Being really resourceful and really resilient. Both me making the project and program resilient with redundancies and just that resourcefulness and that being able to push through that kind of grit as you listed on one of your things, right? And so it's really just finding a way. And when I hear no, I just hear no, not that way, right? It's really all it is. It's not a no. There's rarely ever a no. And, I've told some people that, and, there was one thing I had a hard time kind of getting through, and I wound up deciding not to do it. A couple people are like, well, why didn't you do this? You always got all this stuff through and you claim all these things. Like, yeah, you're right. But sometimes you have to evaluate it and look at, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? It would have taken so much that all these other projects would have fell off that were important as well, if not equally more. So now you're like, okay, I've got this one that's going through, but these other 3 or 4 are going to fall off and suffer because of it. So you look at the weight of the totality of them and the impact, the one really wasn't worth it. And then I could have solved it by this way, but then it creates a bigger risk and a bigger issue down the road. So, and waste money and some other things. And so it's, it's not necessarily a good use of resources and time. And I think that's really how you have to look at some of it. And, a lot of times in the military and in the government, problem solving comes down to people skills. And that's the interpersonal communication piece. It's not, people say it all the time. It's really not who you know, or not really what you know, but it's who you know. Yeah. And it's so true, right? To get something through, or to get things signed off and to get stuff through the wickets, unfortunately, every now and again, you have to, it's kind of, kind of a bummer, right? You have to have somebody do you a solid or a favor to have them just do their job, right? Unfortunately. I got to be honest about it, like you're like, hey, thanks a lot, man. Good hookup. But in reality, I'm thinking like, thanks for doing your job. You know
like
what I mean?
Like, come on, or the CAC place and they do a really good job. And I'm like, dude, man, that was amazing. You hooked me up. But in hindsight, I'm like, bro, all you did was your job. But I had to tell you did a really good job.
Right, yeah. But you're like, well, in a way, that's kind of how it should be. Do your job well, right? The excellence in all we do, core value. Yeah. And so if you're kind of looking at that, so that was kind of how I got to be a problem solver. People are like, oh, even like some of the airmen, they were like, oh, give this so-and-so dirtbag to Z, man. He won't put up with that nonsense, And I'm like, why is it always got to be me? So after a while, it kind of became a thing. And I got kind of a little bit tired of it, but I was like, I guess I see the purpose in it and everything. But, then that was just kind of how it went. And it worked for me for a bit. And then I wound up solving different problems. It was people problems and other things. And I think I got thrown into the interpersonal communication piece because of that. And when I was in training, I got sent to an interpersonal communications instructor course, which was really good, really developed a lot. And I saw a lot and saw some things myself. And okay, let's look at different ways. Let's look at different things. And then the verbal judo piece helped out immensely. And I saw a lot of return on investment myself and others on that, and seeing how it helped other people and seeing how it changed their lives. And, I actually got Doc Thompson to come teach the class and teach us, but she only did like 2 classes a year. So it was before he passed away. So it was pretty lucky he came to teach us, right? Got some signed copies of his book and people were super happy. One guy was like, man, I think this might've saved my marriage. He was like, it helped me out a lot. Stuff like that was really cool to see. And that's that interpersonal piece and like being able to help folks out and seeing what he took his program to and what he did and how it helps people's lives in general. Super. That stuff's amazing because you change, a parent's perspective on life and how they deal with their spouse, right? And if they have kids, how they treat their kids and how that impacts their whole relationship and others now and other people they supervise. It's not only did you impact that one person, but now you've impacted the next generation of them. You've impacted the next generation because of people they supervise, the next generation of leaders, that it really grows down and goes from there. And those ethics, those values, those characteristics are instilled in the next folks. And that's really why I appreciate a lot of it and seeing some of the things that I've seen and kind of my why and, I guess the whole interpersonal communication piece and all of that.
Yeah, I'm a huge component of networking and relationships. I've said it multiple times, to solve a lot of the military problems, it all comes down to relationships, like hands down. If you look at simple mistakes that cause like Class A mishaps or anything like that, or any incident, if you were to boil down like the 5 whys and dig deep into like, why did this happen? Then ask why did that? So it's similar in the innovation world, when we're trying to solve a problem. A lot of it's going to come down to like, oh, this airman just didn't know this job, or they did this small step incorrectly to go faster. Why did they go faster? Did they not care what they were doing? Did they not have any respect for the job? Was nobody caring for them? If the relationships would have been built at the lowest level with that team, that airman may have taken that second and been like, I shouldn't be doing this shortcut or skipping this step because it's going to affect my team or affect my boss, or, airman so-and-so is relying on me to do it right. And you also talked about, and that's what I try to do at DIAS with the RAD program I run. So I'm trying to build this group of airmen through DIAS where we have this small community of multiple airmen that work different jobs. And I tell them, like, you guys, we don't just ruck on these days to ruck for 2 hours to burn calories. We ruck because we have security forces airmen out there with us, and LRS airmen and a maintenance airman. And when the time comes and you guys are working at your job and you're like, hey, I need to know why security forces is running this exercise. Well, let me text my buddy Maldonado, who's security forces, and I'll get the scoop, or like maybe security forces like, hey, what's going on the maintenance side? I heard they had something going on in their shop. Oh, let me text the guy I know over there. So they're getting to know each other without getting to know each other and how it's going to impact later on down the road. And so that's why, man, networking is just it's so beneficial. And it's not taught that well when we're at the lowest level of the military, because you're so focused on just your job, and your shop. When in reality, like you said, those crossover opportunities, to go work somewhere else, go shadow, these other jobs, or get to know people, it's lost now, and a lot of it is due to really like technology, with airmen being in their dorms all the time, like this gaming community. Back in the day, where we had a lot of intramurals, going on base, you were getting to know other squadrons, you were competing with them, you were getting to build those relationships outside of your job. So you knew who to talk. And that's why I love intramurals overall in the military, because I still love playing intramurals with my OSS, because we'd go play SFS, we'd go play LRS. And even though they beat us on the field, if I have a problem, I have that relationship already. I can be like, hey, let me call the quarterback of the LRS team that I remember going against last season, because he may be able to help us with this problem. And so it all boils down to that.
For sure. No, it's good stuff. And, I think I got pretty good too when, and I remember when I go through ALS and, people were talking about like the networking. This is like the best part of the whole school and doing it in person, right?
Yeah.
With some of that highlighted. And I think the other thing is, about the problem solving is being a possibilityist, right? I kind of consider myself a possibilityist with the problem solving, looking at all the possibilities and what's there, and not just, oh, there's this problem, and I think a lot of people get so focused on the problem and other things, but looking at all the possibilities out there, not just for a problem, but all kinds of other ways and things to do.
Yeah, it's a good way. I did see the possibility-ist, I think you have in your little bio part. That's cool. Instead of looking at the problem, look at the possibilities that can come
and the opportunities. Yep.
Yeah, because most of the time,
a chance to grow and learn.
Yeah, because most of the time when we're given a task, we're sort of already told how they want us to solve it, right? Like leadership's going to come down and be like, "Hey, here's your problem." They're going to probably try to give you some way to solve it because that's what they want. So you're sort of already funneled down that way, but and that's where we've been talking about mission command a lot right now in this transition of the Air Force, where it's not decentralized command or anything like that, but mission command is where a commander is delegating his mission down to the lowest level for them to execute without like direct guidance on what to get done. They have the overall commander's intent, but the commanders have built a relationship with the lowest level airmen to give their intent, and then the airmen go do it, whatever way possible. They're not told by their commander, like, I want it done this way. The commander goes, hey, our intent is to fix this problem. That's it. Then they leave, and then it gets done, which is really hard to do for leaders, to not delegate, not micromanage, and not be there the whole time.
Right.
Cool. Let's see. We got about 10 minutes here. What traits did you have that I listed out to you that caught your eye, or you want to talk about in depth any?
Yeah, I think some of the getting to know yourself, right? Like there's some of these different assessments. I mean, there's a lot of different assessments out there, and a lot of different things, but really getting to know yourself and understanding yourself, your strengths. I don't want to say weaknesses, but really kind of your stuff that you may not be as good at. Some people are like, oh, you got to short us up or operate here. And, I noticed one thing you said, like, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. But I mean, really a lot of times too, if you're good at something, it's going to come more naturally and easier to you. You're going to enjoy it as well. So I think doing what you like and being happy, you're going to do better at it. Right. And, but sometimes you don't know if you're good at something until you get pushed out of your comfort zone and to do something. Right. Like I remember I got volunteered to do, run a Christmas party one year. And I was like, I thought about it. I'm like, man, I don't know. It's a lot of work and all this. And like, oh, but if it doesn't come out good, man, everyone's going to hate me because like the Christmas party is going to be like hot garbage. You know how that is, man. Like everybody goes to the Christmas party and doesn't have a good time, bro. Like, oh, that's it. Dunskies, And so I was like, and I wound up doing it. And everybody like a short turnaround too, because like nobody wanted to do it. Of course, everybody was behind. Wound up being a great party. A couple people were like, man, it's like one of the best Christmas parties ever. Like everybody was so happy. Right. And then like, I remember I invited like the wing commander, like everybody, I was like, yeah, come on out, sir. You're my chain of command, like MSG commander. And they were like, they all showed up and they're like, oh, they were buying drinks for people. And it was like, man, I want to be in a great time, and I was really surprised. Like, man, this came out awesome. And a couple people were like, oh, I can't believe you picked so-and-so to MC this. Oh, a couple of beers. And they were real nervous about it, and I was like, hey, he wanted to do it. He's motivated. Nobody else volunteered. And, so I wound up being a great time. And everybody had a lot of fun, and like, it just was a great experience. I learned a lot about some more leadership piece, I guess, as well. Some of the things I was really good at, and that really led me into a lot of event leading. And even on the civilian world now, I mean, I've been a guest speaker. I've been on panels. I've run events. I've helped people plan like major events for companies and for conferences and things. And that's some of those basic things and those things that I thought were basic and I wasn't very good at, turned out to be a really good strength of mine, right? Something I was good at and I harnessed more and got better at, and learning those skills of, being good with people, being a connector of people and bringing people together and things together is really kind of being able to show in different areas, different realms that it's good at and how it's benefited some of those.
Yeah. And I know we didn't dive too much into your innovation side of, what you do with the military, how that transition went, which is a great topic for later. Innovation is a very leadership skill too, right? Being able to think outside the box, go with the possibilities of solutions that you talked about. And so that was really cool to hear. One thing I did like that you just mentioned is be good at what you're good at, right? Like that is a great leadership trait that a lot of people don't focus on too much. And so understanding what you're good at, how to excel in that area, but then know when you've plateaued, because we talked about that earlier. We talked about when you plateau at what you're good at, you have to take those other opportunities. You have to reach outside your comfort zone. And then that's where you can, one thing I also want to cover, which I really like what you said, is some leadership traits may not apply at a certain time in our life or career, but they'll apply later. And so understanding like recycling the leadership traits is really key too, right? Like I remember when I was a young AFE flight commander, the leadership trait I used was very assertive and, direct. And I was like, man, that's not a good one. But then now I have that saved where if I need to use it later on down the road in a different area of my life, I can. So for those listening, leadership traits are going to be hit or miss, but don't just throw it away and never use it because you may need it somewhere down the road.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's a great point because, so one good thing I kind of liked, I use it a lot. A lot of people I've heard of it like, kind of chameleon, right? I kind of joke like chameleon leadership or be the chameleon, right? Kind of be what you need to be at that given situation and what's there. A lot of people are like, oh, what kind of leader are you? Oh, I'm this kind of leader, or I'm authoritarian, or I'm this. And they kind of compartmentalize themselves, right? And box themselves in. I say, I am what the situation calls for. Whatever is needed at the time is kind of the person you may need to be. Everybody traditionally has their, hey, what's my default? Or has maybe like a main. But really, it's what's the situation called for? What do the people need? what's needed at the time for the people and what's best for the situation, best for the people that are there. And I think sometimes people confuse that, obviously it happens a lot and we talk about it all the time, but I think that people confuse leadership and management quite a bit, or sometimes use interchangeably when they can be, depending. But, the old adage of you manage programs, right? And you lead people, but really you still have to lead. At some point, people are in the program. You have to lead the people.
Yeah, that was good. Oh man, that was a banger right towards the end, man. You're a leader of the situation. That's huge. That right there will make night and day difference between somebody thinking about how to be a leader right now. Don't focus on being that leader all the time. Like it's super situational dependent. As a parent, like there may be a different way to be a leadership to my kid one night than there was the next night, so right. Or to my spouse or to my coworkers. That was a great banger towards the end, man. I love that. That was good. So really quick, as we wrap up here, we'll leave on the high note. What book do you have for people out there to end the podcast on another great note?
I'll go ahead and throw out two. I'll say Strength-Based Leadership, right, to get to know yourself. And then Change Your World by John Maxwell.
Change Your World?
By John Maxwell. And then the other one is Strength Finders or Strength-Based Leadership. I think it's like Strength-Based Leadership, Strength Finders. And I think it's on 2.0 right now or 2.5. I don't know, something like that. It's there's also there's a self-assessment test in that each book comes with. I've actually handed that book out to some folks I really like and give them that book to take the self-assessment and see where they're at. And then it tells you how to work within your leadership styles, where they're at, how they're good to be used, and kind of guides you as well. So it's a pretty good book.
Nice. Yeah, I think the one I'll throw out, I finished it in 2 days. It's a pretty simple one. I think I threw it on my LinkedIn. It's Energy Bus. Very simple book.
Oh, cool.
I loved reading it. It's cool. It's a good book on the energy bus is a phrase they talk about on you drive your bus to success. You bring positive energy on your bus, which are the people around you. Yep. You kick bad energy off your bus, which could be the people around you. And you control it, right? You control your destiny and where you're going. And so it's a good book, really simple. And then for those listening, I'll leave them in the show notes as well. I'll just find like the Amazon for them, and we'll get those later as well. I'll also get your info as well, Z, for people to reach out to you. So I'll get that from you after. But do you have any last parting shots for those listening?
No, just, don't be afraid to get out and talk to folks and, have those difficult conversations. It's hard to do sometimes, right? It's tough. I've done it a lot, and sometimes it's hard to do. People talk about it, but getting in and doing it and making the time for it. I think a lot of times everybody's busy. Know what you can put off. Know it has to be done now, and know it's going to kind of really get you in trouble, get you hemmed up, so to speak, or whatever, right? And the stuff that has to get done to pay the bills, then know the stuff that can wait, or if it can wait till at night and do it 10 o'clock at night before you go to bed or first thing in the morning, do those things. And if it's something that's going to impact somebody and it's important to somebody else, it should be important to you as a leader and as a supervisor. So make sure those important things are getting taken care of, right? I think that's kind of a big thing because, a couple of times I know towards the end, I was like, yo, man, I'm out. End of the day here. I got to go to the gym, man. I can't do this no more right now. I'm a little too upset and work, whatever. But when I stay until 8 o'clock, they're like, oh, I'm like, well, yeah, it doesn't matter because your award package is due. It didn't get to me till late. Here it is, right? Or your, evaluation is due, or you know what? Hey, this contract has to get signed and get through so we all get paid to keep everybody in business and keep paychecks coming in. Those are things that are important, have to get done. They can't wait, right? But at the same token, if you're not there to take care of your people because they're having a crisis, they can't take care of the job or the mission or with the company, and then that's going to impact everything as well. You're going to lose a good employee. Or it takes a lot to rework them and get them back and to earn that trust back and those things. So just, really taking care of the people and knowing, what's important, what's not important, and what other people value as well.
Yeah, no, that was good. Just to get to know people. That's why I love doing this podcast, because I get a chance to get to know people I've never talked to before. Like we've chatted hit or miss on LinkedIn. We set up a time, we chatted, we learned, we got to know each other, we got better. That's what's great. For most people, it can be as simple as a 10-minute conversation with someone, going to lunch with somebody in your workplace that you may not know. That's all it takes to just get to know some people around you. So that being said, thank you, man. I appreciate it. For those listening, if you didn't take notes, I'll be upset. I got my page of notes here. We dropped 3 banger books for you guys. We hit some good stuff. I appreciate it. And I'm going to drop this episode probably tomorrow now that I'm on baby leave and I got some good time. So we'll get that one out there. But hold on for a little bit after. We'll let it download. We'll take a quick selfie, and then I'll let you get on your way. All right. It's going to...
Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. You're a great host.